Okay, so what if I told you there's a player right now who is statistically combining the peak offensive powers of Michael Jordan and LeBron James? Sounds impossible, right? Well, that's the exact claim that just recently lit up the internet. And today, we're going to break that all down. We're going to dive into how a modern sports debate is born, how it's argued, and what it really tells us about that never ending quest to name the GOAT. So, where did this all come from? Well, like a lot of these intense debates nowadays, it all started with a single post. A Reddit user dropped what was basically a statistical bomb that compared Oklahoma City's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander not just to the guys he's playing against, but to the absolute legends of the game. And there it is, from a user named aggressive_bed6012. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This isn't just saying Shai is having a great year. It's claiming he's statistically fusing two of the greatest players ever into one. He's doing something genuinely unseen before. This is the kind of bold, data-driven statement that the internet was basically built to argue about. So, let's break down the first piece of this argument, efficiency. The post compared Shai's true shooting percentage to LeBron's insane 2013 season, a year he was almost the unanimous MVP. And the numbers suggest that Shai is scoring with an efficiency that's right up there with one of the most dominant seasons we have ever seen from LeBron. Now for part two, scoring volume. And this is where the argument gets really wild. The post claims that Shai's scoring rate, once you adjust for the different pace and scoring environments, is actually higher than Michael Jordan's during his 1991 peak. The key here isn't just that he scores a lot, but the sheer volume he produces compared to his era. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, we need to quickly unpack the stats being used. This isn't just your basic points per game. This is a much deeper analytical dive. So how exactly is this case being built? First up is true shooting percentage, or TS%. You can just think of it as a much more complete way to measure how good a player is at scoring. It doesn't just look at shots from the floor, it factors in the extra value of three-pointers and how good you are at free throws. It gives us a way better picture of scoring efficiency. And look at this number right here. This perfectly captures the argument. At the time of the post, Shai wasn't just efficient, he was a ridiculous 10.7% more efficient than the average NBA player. It's one thing to be a little bit above average. It's another thing to be in a completely different stratosphere. And that's the kind of thing that sparks these legendary comparisons. So what about that whole era adjustment thing? It sounds super complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. You're basically asking, what if you dropped 1991 Michael Jordan into today's league with its crazy fast pace and higher scores? What would his numbers actually look like? This formula is an attempt to create a kind of statistical time machine to answer that question. And the final pillar of the argument was ball security. One of MJ's most underrated skills was how rarely he turned the ball over, especially considering how much he had it. The argument here is that Shai's numbers, his assist-to-turnover ratio, his turnover percentage, aren't just good, they're historically elite. Maybe even better than Jordan's in his prime. But you know how the internet works. No huge claim goes unchallenged for long. And almost immediately, a super detailed, methodical rebuttal showed up, and it questioned the entire foundation of this whole unparalleled season. And that's the big question we have to ask, right? The initial argument is compelling. It's got numbers, it's got legends. But is it really telling the whole story? Or are there some serious flaws in the logic here? And here comes Reddit user Shark Lava Pits, who laid out this just clinical counterargument. It wasn't just, nah, you're wrong. It was a complete critique of the statistical methods being used to make such a huge claim in the first place. The first, and maybe the most glaring critique, sample size. As you can see right here, the whole comparison is pitting Shai's 33-game hot streak against the full marathon seasons of LeBron and Jordan. I mean, having a great month is one thing. Sustaining that level of play over an entire 82-game grind is a completely different animal. And the critique didn't stop there. The rebuttal just went piece by piece, questioning everything from potential math errors in that era adjustment to using misleading labels. But the biggest point was this. The original argument totally ignored the context of the game itself, reminding us that a player's real value is rarely captured in a simple box score. And this really gets us to the heart of almost every great sports debate. The numbers, they can tell us a lot, but they can't tell us everything. There are these unquantifiable factors that statistics just can't measure. For example, just think about the sheer physicality of Jordan's era. Hand checking was legal. Defenders could literally put their hands on you to steer you and slow you down.
The game was just more brutal on the perimeter, which made every single bucket that much harder to earn. You can't just adjust the stats. You have to account for the physical reality of the game they were playing.
Now contrast that with today. The league emphasizes freedom of movement, which means that kind of physical defense Jordan faced is now a foul. You combine that with the huge strategic shift towards floor spacing because of the three-point shot, and you've got an environment that is built for offensive superstars to put up numbers in ways that were just impossible 30 years ago.
And this is really the intellectual core of the entire rebuttal. That statistical tool they use to compare eras, it's not some neutral fact, it's a model. And that model makes a huge assumption that all those physical and strategic differences between eras, they just don't matter. And the critic argues that's a massive and deeply flawed assumption to make. Finally, there's what you might call the gravity argument. How much does a player's mere presence on the floor completely warp the other team's defense and create easy opportunities for his teammates? This is something guys like Steph Curry, LeBron, and Jordan were absolute masters at, and it's an impact that goes way beyond their personal points or assists. So ultimately, this whole back and forth about Shai's season, it's not really about Shai. It's a proxy war. It's a perfect little microcosm of the biggest, most timeless argument in all of basketball, the battle for the title of GOAT. And the GOAT conversation, it almost always lands right here, Jordan versus LeBron. This table really tells the whole story of the debate. In one column, you have Jordan's overwhelming dominance, more rings, more finals MVPs, a staggering 10 scoring titles. But then you look at the other column, LeBron's unbelievable longevity, with 20 All-NBA selections to MJ's 11. Every single number here is a weapon for a different side of the argument. And this is what it all boils down to, the two central pillars of the debate. Do you value Michael Jordan's absolute, unrivaled peak dominance, a perfect 6 for 6 in the finals, never even saw a Game 7? Or do you value LeBron James's unprecedented longevity, just sustained top-tier excellence for over 20 years across multiple teams and multiple eras? And that's exactly why this whole Shai debate is so fascinating. It perfectly mirrors that larger fight. Is Shai's statistical peak, however long it lasts, truly comparable to the sustained peaks of the all-time greats? It forces us to ask that same fundamental question. How do we weigh a brilliant flash of production against that decade-defining consistency? Which leaves us with this final thought. We have more data, more advanced stats, and more ways to analyze the game than ever before in history. But has any of it actually gotten us any closer to a final answer on who's the greatest? Or have we just invented more sophisticated, more complex, and maybe more interesting ways to keep asking the exact same wonderful, unanswerable question?